in a lot of ways it did the same thing that some blaxploitation movies did in the 1960s. It showed people that there was a market for this, and so people started marketing toward that. And I think that's been the most important, I think, is the 1990s, when we saw that proliferation of black superheroes. I mean, Spawn was a black superhero. Most people don't know that. You know, like those kind of things. I think that was the thing that pushed it over the boundaries. My name is Joel Christian Gill, and this is a book called Fast Enough, Bessie Stringfield's First Ride, which is the story of Bessie Stringfield, who was one of the first black women to crisscross the United States on a motorcycle. And it's a story about her as a child. My goal is for little white kids to read these stories and go, I want to grow up to be like Bessie Stringfield. I want to grow up to be like Bass Reeves. Because when we do that, we've actually that's when we get to a post-racial understanding. Like, they don't look at it as like, oh, you need a white superhero or you need a black superhero. It's like, we respect all of these superheroes. They are all important. So now we have this level playing field, but it's going to take a lot for us to do that. It's going to take a lot more stories like this. Black people are not, you know, amorphous. We're not like this one block of people. Like, I go home and I have family members that supported Trump. You know, like, we have like these very sort of like different kinds of people within the black community. And if you can do this and share that story, then we start to understand that these stories are quintessentially American stories, not necessarily just black history.
My name is Devon Thomas, and I'm cos life playing as Blade. We've always been here. They've always been fascinated by us. When we look at the X-Men, who are we looking at? Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, right? Because you have Professor X, and then you have Magneto, right? Let's start with Professor X. He has a non-violent approach to the situation. Isn't that Professor X? Doesn't that sound familiar? Then we have Magneto. Non-violent by any means necessary. So we've always been there. They've always been fascinated by our athletic ability and our movement. We've always had that superior being inside of us. So we've always been here.
If you take, you know, any group of people and you look at how far we've come in like 3 or 4 generations, that is definitely the Horatio Alger story. That is a rags to riches as an entire group of people. It's not the Horatio Alger story where it's like this young white man who like finds this, you know, amazing benefactor and he helps him. No, it's like black people, like, you don't have somebody doing that. It's just like, you know what, you want to be successful, you got to put your head down and do it. You know, and if you do that, you can be successful. It's going to be harder for you because you are black, but you can do that.
Are you guys having fun today?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see everything. I wish I had school field trips like this when I was little. Hi, my name is Shauna J. Grant, and I'm a cartoonist and illustrator.
Where are those shredded Wakanda jackets? We got them all together now.
For the past about like 2-3 years, I've been working on my webcomic called Princess Love Pond, and that's a magical girl series because I grew up at the time of like Sailor Moon being on TV and stuff, so I'm really inspired by anime and manga and magical girl everything. And through doing Princess Love Pond, I was able to get more comic work. I've done covers for Boom Studios, Adventure Time. I've been part of several anthologies published by Dirty Diamonds. I've been part of The Secret Loves of Geeks, published by Dark Horse Comics. You can also find me in like the art book Black Comics Returns that was published by Lion Forge, and I'm in the Black Encyclopedia of Comics that came out last year, and now I have 3 different book deals that I am juggling with First, Second, and Lion Forge. So it's been a long time. If you would like to look through, feel free. This is my comic here. It's a magical girl series. She fights with hearts and kisses. It can be daunting because there aren't a lot of Black female creators out there to look up to. So it's kind of like going out there and being like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? You know, like it can like emotionally just be hard to like stick to it, but it's worth it and it's growing, you know, like because we've always been here. Like Black women have always been into comics and everything. You have Alethea Martinez, who's like the only Black female artist that's working for Marvel. So there's people out there. And if you look in like the indie scene, you have Iron Circus Comics, which is an indie comic publisher who has pretty much like slayed the Kickstarter scene. Like she knows how to publish a book through Kickstarter. So she runs her own comic publisher publication, and she is a Black female artist as well. So there's definitely, they're out there.
How do you feel about that interview?
My name is Kwanzaa Sajifo, and I am the author and co-creator of Black, a comic book that asks the question, what if only Black people had superpowers? So the inspiration behind the story was just that I had worked in the comic book industry for over 10 years between Marvel and DC, and a lot of what I saw was that there was a lack of Black representation in comic books because there's a lack of Black representation working in comic books. So I was often the only person of color in the room who even had the slightest bit of agency in terms of directing content. I was, like a young comic reader. I was reading Spider-Man, X-Men, Superman, all those characters, and it wasn't until Milestone Media came on the scene and launched a bunch of characters of color like Static, Hardware, and Icon back in the 90s that I realized that one, nobody who looked like me was in comic books before, and 2, there are actual people who look like me making these comic books. So in order to make sure that there was more comic books out there that reflected the breadth and depth of what Blackness is, I decided to launch a Kickstarter with my colleagues and see if people would really be into the idea of what if only Black people had superpowers.
We live in this world, in this society that, looks at Black people as this thing over here. Like they're over here. Like even when you get like liberal people who think, I'm doing a really good job of like with my Black friends, and I'm talking to my they really like it's still like you are that thing over there. Like you are still a separate thing. And I think it's really important to start sharing these stories so that people understand that we're not just this thing over there.